Welcome to the second day of Pulse and Shop Talk. My name's Calypso Rose and I'm director of the Inditute. And we curate workshops and talks all across London, and we've curated this year's Pulse Talks. Crowdfunding is everywhere. It's also a dark art. If you're looking to launch a new product or service, you need to know how to engage your audience. Hen Norton is a creative producer and documentary filmmaker who uses crowdfunding to finance her own projects. Due to constant inquiries about the process, Hen also runs workshops to demystify the process, so you can learn about your target audience and how to make the most of your presentation. So to get the crowd on side, here is Hen Norton.
Is this on? Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. So, as Calypso said, I'm Hen, and I'm a filmmaker and a creative producer, and a lot of the work I've done has been around building audiences, building networks. And back in January 2011, I launched the first crowdfunding platform for the arts in the UK, and I co-founded it with a guy called Ed Whiting. And that came about because at the time I was working much more in the arts world and community world, and Ed was actually working for the Treasury, and we were introduced to one another, and it was the time when there was a lot of funding cuts to arts funding, culture funding, and we wanted to look at ways of empowering individuals, small businesses, collectives, to actually get projects off the ground and to find alternative ways of funding that work. And so we came up with what I call the three-strand model, which is now something that's incredibly familiar to people. Crowdfunding is huge here now. Everyone's talking about it. Kickstarter's here, and there are loads and loads of other platforms as well. But at the time, it didn't really exist. And I think the key thing that I like to stress about crowdfunding is that the crowd, you have to start with the crowd. When you're starting a business or a project or a creative enterprise, whatever it is, the most valuable thing is building that audience and building that network, because without them, you don't have anything. You don't have buyers, you don't have people to engage with the work, and so it's about the crowd. And the way I talk about crowdfunding is this three-strand model. And what I based it on was a model that I had seen in the arts world that I didn't think was working. So what I was seeing was I was going into arts organizations and creative businesses, and there was this kind of process that was taking place. And the process that was taking place was that people were meeting, they were having ideas, they were coming up with their concept, whether it was that they wanted to do an exhibition, whether they wanted to make a film, whether they wanted to start a small business. And we were all getting very, very excited about this idea, you know, having these fantastic conversations, planning how it was going to change the world, all of this kind of thing. And then what was happening was it was being handed over to the fundraising department or the people who were going to go out and get the money. And they were sort of sent off to go and get the cash and go and get the money. And then what was happening was if they were lucky enough to get that investment and get that money behind their project, they would then come back with that, and that was the point at which the doors were closed on the outside world and the product was made. So in the arts world, that was the art took place and was made behind the scenes, or, you know, that was all created. And then there would be a moment where that group would identify this is the moment that this is now going to go public. We're now going to turn this into something public. We want to have this exhibition. And what do you need? You need an audience. So in the same way with a business, you need buyers. And so then there was this kind of panic about marketing, and suddenly everyone sort of burst into action and started doing marketing and audience development and reaching out to their networks and engaging people. But at the same time, they were trying to actually get that product, get that project off the ground. And so there wasn't enough time for it, and it was kind of always felt very rushed. And so I kind of thought, well, hang on, there must be a better way of doing this. And this is what brings us back to crowdfunding, because I came up with this concept of actually this three-strand idea. And the way crowdfunding works, in short, is that you get a lot of people to put in a small amount of money in return for some kind of reward, and that's the key, to make up a larger pot of money. But at the end, so what you get with a crowdfunding is you get these three strands. And strand number one is money. So at the end of a crowdfunding campaign, you have a pot of money to help you get whatever it is off the ground that you're trying to do. But more importantly than that, because the money goes very, very quickly, we spend money, it'll go. But the thing that you also get is a body of people. And you get a crowd of people. And that crowd of people are a captive, engaged audience who are on board at the foundation stage. And they are so valuable in that process of making and that process of creating. Because it's them, they're talking to their networks, they're engaging with what you do, they're a ready audience. If it's a product that you're going to sell, they're people who already want that product. They're people who potentially are going to talk to you. I mean, as Calypso said, I'm a filmmaker. And I've recently made my first feature documentary, and we crowdfunded to make that. And the value in the crowd has been extraordinary. The things we have got now from people who invested back then, be it equipment, screening rooms, press, all of the things you need to get something off the ground, they are the people who we've gone to first and are engaged with it. So you have a pot of money, you have people, and you also have an idea. And the thing about the idea is that you really, really develop it, and you develop it with the context of an audience in mind. So it really helps you think about who are your buyers, who are going to engage with this, why are they going to engage with it, why am I creating this and putting this out into the world? And it forces you to ask all those difficult questions about what you're doing. So that's the kind of three-strand model. In short, and the way rewards, I just want to talk briefly about rewards, because that's what makes this different. I had, right back in 2011, when crowdfunding was still kind of early days, I remember going speaking at a conference, and a guy stood up and said, oh, well, crowdfunding's just like shaking a bucket outside a train station. It's the same thing. And I sort of had to explain that actually it's not about that. It's about what it does is it offers people the potential to invest and engage in something on another level. It is about rewarding people. There is a transaction that takes place. So everybody that gives you money, whether it's £10, £100, £1,000, gets something back in return. And I think there are sort of three categories for the way we understand rewards. And those categories are the name in lights. So that is some kind of recognition. That is the name in the back of a book. That is a tweet. That is a thank you. But it's a promoting that person. As name in lights, there is a keepsake. Now this one, it can be really, really powerful. It's very powerful in the kind of arts world particularly, but it can be powerful across the board. And actually, if you've got a product, it could be really powerful too, because a keepsake allows people to receive something from you and to get something back, so something physical. So that might be a letter of thanks, that might be an actual product, that might be, in terms of artists, that might be an artist sketch or a preparatory drawing or something like that. And in the arts world, the way I always talk about it is, it gives people a way of actually buying someone's art. It gives people a way of sort of, even at a really low level, of engaging. And then the third category is an experience. So it's inviting people to actually come and experience something, whether that's going to the studio, going to the factory, meeting with you, having a conversation. Because what people engage with is they engage with the story. They like to hear, people want to get closer to the people actually creating and making. And the thing about most people don't get to have that creative process. And the thing about these rewards is it allows them to actually participate and engage with what you're doing and come on that journey and come on that story with you. So that's a kind of very short explanation of why crowdfunding is different. I'm going to give you two examples of rewards that have worked really, really well. And I think the other thing about rewards is you need to turn this around. So the thing about crowdfunding is it needs to solve problems for you. So I met with this amazing sculptor in Manchester. And I was running a workshop up there. And she said to me that she needed to raise money to create a chandelier of lost earrings. And she needed to raise £1,000 to create this. And I said to her, okay, well, what are the problems you're faced with? What are the challenges that you're finding hardest? And everyone's answer to that is always money. It's always, oh, I need to get the money. And I said, okay, put that down for a minute and let's talk about what are the other challenges. And she said to me, well, the thing I'm finding really, really difficult is getting the earrings. And I'm having to collect all these earrings. And so we came up with an idea of actually, well, what about if for a £20 reward, people could send you, like socks, you only ever have one of them, people could send you their lost earrings. And what that means is that you can then include those lost earrings in your piece. But it has another value, which is those people will want to, because we've all got that childlike thing, will want to come to that launch exhibition to see their earrings in situ in that piece of artwork. So you have got this amazing audience and this captive audience. So it's turning things on their head and thinking laterally about how you solve your problems. I met with another guy really, really early on, and he wanted to write a book. And he was a travel writer, he's a journalist, and he'd found a book from the 15th century, and it was a travel guide to Europe. And so he was going to retrace the steps of this travel guide to Europe in whenever it was, 2012. And it was really, really difficult because there was no moment of exhibition. There was no obvious, it wasn't going to happen in a space. He didn't have a studio to offer. He was a solitary writer. So we came up with this idea of, well, why don't you offer the reward of postcards? And so for, I think it was £10 or £20, you received a postcard from somewhere along his journey. And he told you a little story. And then for a little bit more, you received a postcard from a couple of places along his journey. And it was so successful. He raised over the amount of money he needed. But he also was in a position where all these people at the end wanted to come to the book launch, wanted to buy the book, and he had that audience ready for when he got back from his travels. And I saw him just before he left, and he said to me, this is really amazing because I've got this pot of money and it has gone from an idea that was something I wanted to do, that I thought was exciting, to this thing that actually all these other people want me to do and all these other people are engaged with, and they're waiting for the book at the end of it. But I don't actually have to compromise my project or take them with me or anything like that. So I think you have to sort of think about it like that. And I definitely had that when I made my film. So I started the crowdfunding platform first, and then thought, well, hang on, I'm trying to make a documentary film here. Maybe I should put my money where my mouth is and actually crowdfund for my own project, which I did. And again, I had that exact feeling. I had this extraordinary feeling where you know you've got a great idea, you know you've got something that people are going to engage with, but you have absolutely no evidence for that. And by crowdfunding and by raising the money for it and by creating a crowd of about 300 people for us initially who wanted us to make that we could then work with, I went from feeling like an independent filmmaker who was just following a passion to actually feeling like I was creating something for an engaged audience, and they've come with me on that journey. And I do think that makes a fundamental difference. The other reason it makes a fundamental difference is because you can use it to leverage funds. So the real advantage of crowdfunding is sometimes, and it's less the case when you have a product and when you have a business plan and you have something to sell, but it's still completely applicable. So from a film point of view or an arts point of view, or even a product designer who hasn't done anything before, you have nothing to evidence, you maybe haven't started a business before, you're an emerging entrepreneur, and you go to funders and you go, I've got this great idea, and I know it's brilliant, and you should invest money in it. They're going to say, what is the return for me? However generous they are, that is what they are going to think and say. And sometimes, particularly with creative projects, it can be almost impossible to answer that question. And often, the answer is probably financially not very much. It certainly is as an independent niche documentary maker. But there are two things these people are interested in. One is financial return, and the other is people. Because the most valuable thing in business or in anything that we do is engagement and people and networks. And if you have run a crowdfunding campaign and you have got X number of people behind you, then suddenly you are in a position to evidence want and need for the thing you're creating. And if you can go to someone and say, all these people have backed this so far, this is how much money I've managed to get behind this already, then suddenly your conversation with people about further investment and match funding is much, much stronger. And that's exactly what I did with the documentary. So before I ran a crowdfunding campaign, I was like talking to walls, and people were saying, yeah, it's a really nice idea, but, you know. And then I ran a crowdfunding campaign, and I managed to raise £10,000 and then go to individual investors and get them to put in to match fund that. So I was then in a position where I managed to triple that money by just being able to say, look, all these people are behind this idea and want this to happen. So very, very briefly, because I don't think I have too much time left, but I'm just going to talk briefly about the kind of marketing strategy and how you think about crowdfunding and the practicalities of crowdfunding. So as you probably know, there are loads of crowdfunding platforms out there, and it can be kind of slightly overwhelming which one you use. I don't have an agenda. I no longer run a crowdfunding platform. I merged mine years ago with another one, so I have no agenda. Kickstarter for me it's the global one, it's the biggest one. It started in the States, it's here now, it's across Europe, it's in Australia. And I think what you'll find is that if you run it with something like that, you can reach audiences that you might not have imagined you could reach. So the other thing about crowdfunding is how you reach audiences beyond your own network. So when you start a business, when you start a project, it is unavoidable. You have to start with your nearest and dearest. If you cannot get the people who know you to back you, then it is almost impossible to get anyone else to back you. But what crowdfunding does is it allows you to scale that network. So for example, and because it's online, you can use social media to do that as well, which can kind of elevate that even more, and you can reach a wider network. So for example, I went on to Facebook one morning. I saw that somebody I had once known at school, a fairly long time ago, was running a crowdfunding campaign. And it kind of caught my eye. He put it on his Facebook page, and it just happened to catch my eye that morning. And it was about London, where I grew up, and it was about maps, and it was kind of, it appealed to things for me. So I read about it, and I put in £20. And I put it on my Facebook page and shared it. And that afternoon, my ex-boyfriend's older sister had seen it on my Facebook page. She had liked it. She'd put money into it, and she'd shared it on her Facebook page. So in one day, that person who'd run the crowdfunding, was running the campaign, had managed to get 2 networks away from his own network. And I had exactly the same thing. So there's sort of loads of different social media platforms. People use them in different ways. I'm not going to go into that now. But the other thing is that what I will say is that Twitter has a slightly different impact on a crowdfunding campaign. So when I was running my crowdfunding campaign for my documentary, what happened was that I had asked an arts organization I'd done a lot of producing for, who had a huge network, to send a tweet out. And this is what you have to do. You have to activate your networks. You have to give them actions to do. You have to say, at 4:00 on Thursday evening, will you say this on my behalf on your Twitter to your networks? So this organization did this for me. They tweeted, she's making this documentary, Later that day, one of their followers was Sheffield Docfest. Now, Sheffield Docfest in the documentary world is a kind of key player, and you really want them to notice you exist. Bearing in mind I was an independent filmmaker. So Sheffield Docfest saw that. They retweeted it to their massive network. What that then did was that meant that they then put that on their Kickstarter page. Certain companies have dedicated pages, and they share certain projects that they are particularly backing. So they put it on their Kickstarter page. That resulted in Kickstarter picking it up and making it their project of the week. Once it got made the project of the week, they then, off the back of that, made it the project of the day. So every single person in the world who went on Kickstarter for that entire day saw Born and Reared, a film by Hen Norton, on the homepage, first thing, fund it. Suddenly, I start getting donations from, and they're not huge, but they're donations from pledges from places in Canada, the States, and suddenly I've reached a global network. And I am still in touch with those people, and I'm still engaging with those people. So it's about thinking about how do you reach out? Where do the people who might be interested in this inhabit, and how do you get to them? And coming up with a strategy. And if you focus on the building of the audience, then the money will follow. And the other really, really key thing is that you have to look after relationships. And this is true of business anyway, and we all know this, but you have to look after relationships. And the thing I see so often is that people get these pledges, they get this money in, and then they don't look after the people. They don't stay in touch, they don't update them, they sometimes don't send out the rewards. And it's really, really important to do that and to keep your side of the bargain, because then people will come with more. And the other thing is, if you can build these people at the low level, you know, the people giving 10, 20 pounds are as important, because they might give you 20 pounds now, but if they really enjoy what you do and you do it successfully, they might well be giving you a lot more when it comes round to your next project or your next product or your next launch. So that is in a short introduction to crowdfunding. There's plenty more. And just to explain practically what you need to do, I mean, I'm not going to go into it in great detail. You can Google crowdfunding. You can find exactly how to do it. But in short, what you need is you need to write a really, really good pitch. And the thing I always say to people is that when you're writing a pitch, a crowdfunding pitch, you need to keep it short. You need to, don't write it either like you're writing a business application or you're writing to a trust and foundation for money. You need to write it like a human being, because people will engage with you and they will engage with your story. So make sure you keep it short and snappy. People don't read loads. You also need to make a short video. The video is absolutely key, and sometimes people want to kind of shy away from it. In the video, you need to have a human being, preferably you, but if it's terrifying for you, you need to find somebody who's kind of excited and charismatic and can do it on your behalf. But the number of people I've done, you know, work with over a period of time, and they've shown me their video, and they haven't put a person in it, and we have to go back to the drawing board. So, all that video has to do, it has to be short, less than a minute preferably. That's impossible, it'll be longer than that, but aim for less than a minute. And it has to tell the same story that the pitch does. And then you need to come up with some rewards. And if you go onto the sites, they show you exactly the steps to follow. And they've made it really, really easy. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into any more detail. And as Calypso said, I offer one-to-one sessions and workshops and things like that. So if you want to talk to me more about it, feel free to get in touch. And if you've got any questions now, I can answer them for you.
Questions from the floor?
I'm going to ask you a question then. Have any of you ever run a crowdfunding campaign? You can just put your hand up. Has anyone run a successful crowdfunding campaign? Cool. Has anyone donated to a crowdfunding campaign? Yeah. That is my really big bit of advice. I don't think you should ever run a crowdfunding campaign until you've donated to a crowdfunding campaign, because I think until you know what it feels like to be a funder, it's very, very difficult to kind of know how to communicate. And I think that actually the feeling of being a funder can be really powerful and engaging, because it allows people to fund projects who might not in the normal environment be in a position to be a funder. And it also teaches you how you want to be treated. Yes.
How much did you first set out to raise? Did you say, was it 10,000?
Yeah, we raised just over, we raised about 10, and we aimed to raise about 8.
And do you think it's achievable and realistic to be aiming to raise figures of hundreds of thousands?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it completely depends on your network. So people often say, how much can I go for? And actually, I think we should probably have gone for more. I think that it's like anything. You have to know what your actual budget is, what you need to get the thing done that you're promising to get done. What the rest, I think it should always be part of a fundraising strategy. So I think you should be thinking about, how do I leverage other funds elsewhere, who are independent, who might back this, who might I partner with. But if you have a wide network and you've got a lot of interest behind you, then there's nothing to say that you can't raise a lot of money. The other thing is viral. If things go viral, they raise huge amounts of money. So there's a very famous one, which is a cat cafe in Shoreditch that raised over £100,000 to set up a cat cafe. And people do raise vast amounts of money. And I always say it's always down to the individual, and I have to look at kind of what they're trying to do, what the network is, and base it on that. But it's a sum, basically. So, but yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hen. It was a fantastic talk. Hen will be around and about for the next sort of 5-10 minutes if anyone has a question. Otherwise, please do tweet Hen at Hen Norton and #ShopTalk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.